why are people so slow to call themselves entrepreneurs?
I think it's almost become a tainted word in some respects, in the say where you don't. It's. I think again it goes. I think Alan Sugar said the same quote in terms of you don't call yourself an entrepreneur, other people call you an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I think that's just what it comes down to. You don't want to self-label yourself because then you're bound to that label.
Mm.
So I think a lot of people are reluctant to do that. And I think there's two types of business people: accidental business people and those that absolutely strive to be business people.
Mm.
And I think for a lot of people, what happens is that they're working on a project and it manifests into a business. And then there's some people that absolutely got the business acumen and they know how to take an idea into a project, into a business, and they make it scalable in a very planned way. And I think you got those two types of people. So I think a lot of people that are reluctant to call themselves that are the ones that are the accidental entrepreneurs.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
Do you think it's easier to be entrepreneurial now? Because we're living in a time where, like, you know, guys like you, guys like us can just set up a podcast, right? And although we're, in the grand scheme of things, early days, you've got, like, huge podcasters all over the world, big guys in America that are doing, you know, like the Brilliant Idiots, they're doing sold out shows in like
Joe Rogan,
big venues. Joe Rogan,
even like here as well, like Free Shots of Tequila.
Yeah.
You know, the Receipts podcast. I mean, there's a lot of even Mostly Lit as well. So
I was listening to Mostly Lit. Mostly Lit. They had a free run recently, and it was a really good episode. So if you guys haven't checked that out,
no, definitely. I was on their podcast as well a couple months ago as well. So even it was good to experience just the team and like they've got like a good chemistry among them.
I feel like right now for the UK creatives, I feel like we're entering a golden era. Even like with podcasts, for example, if you actually look at the podcast, it's nicely like the subject areas are nicely dispersed. Like Mostly Lit, it's a literature podcast. Like that is Free Shots of Tequila. That's general, you know, lad banter.
Yeah,
like
banter,
I just really like what's
diverse.
going on in terms of like the whole UK industry, like UK creative industries, from music to acting to, you know, media. Like these platforms like Link Up TV, Graham Daily are becoming actual like proper establishments. We don't like
they're institutions in their own right.
Exactly. I was just about to say that, but I held off. But yeah, like you don't like we're becoming, the UK is becoming self-sufficient. We don't need like you know, being urban children could basically bankroll these artists and to do whatever they want.
In some respects,
actual money
yes,
in it.
and some respects, no. But to answer your question in terms of like, you know, being an entrepreneur in this day and age, I think the one thing that we do have an advantage of is access. And I think what the internet has done, it's made everything accessible. And the fact is that you can be from anyone, from any walk of life, and you have this. It's almost meritocratic, the internet, in some respects, because the same person who's got $1 million can access the internet in the same way as someone who's got £1,000 in their account, for that matter. So I think in that regard, I think it's easier. However, there's always going to be barriers to access later down the line. But to answer your question in terms of the golden age, I agree. I think we are the content creators. We are the news. We are the new media. And you see that in how things transcend online as well. You see major organizations, big brands that are taking memes that come from Hood documentary.
I saw Google France bloody
Google France, Nintendo. That's exactly that. So in terms of, I think now, although it feels harder to get into certain jobs, or you may feel like it's much more competitive now, I think competition breeds a new sense of creativity. And because of that, we are now creating in such a fast way, in such a quick way, and in such a beautiful way as well. I think there's so many different ways that you can express yourself, which is great to see. Like you said, there's literature podcasts, there's lads podcasts, there's podcasts like these. You know, there's something to facilitate for everyone. There's a niche to be maximized on. Yeah,
that's interesting. You say that about the barriers to entry coming down, because it reminds me of something that when we was spoken about when we had Joe Grind on, when he was kind of saying it's good on the one hand because it's so easy for people to become content creators. But then what he was kind of saying was they were a bit concerned that you were getting these rappers that were basically coming through and just making this music that, you know, mumble raps or trash music that's really not thought out, no respect for the culture, and that kind of brings down the tone. So do you think there's a way to strike the balance between kind of quality content that is being created now and people that are just trying to get famous, trying to get money?
See, you always hear this argument on Twitter, like, oh, everybody wants to be a vlogger, everybody wants to be a blogger, everyone's doing a podcast now, right?
Everyone's a YouTuber.
Yeah, everyone's a YouTuber.
I feel like that's such a shit way to look at
the way I look at it is like, cream always rises to the top. Authenticity will always triumph. So I think in that regard, it is frustrating to see when you're putting your 10,000 hours in. But in the same regard, I don't think you should deter you from anywhere. I mean, in terms of kind of striking a balance, I think if people are much more selective in terms of what they listen to, it's a two-way street. Content needs to be good, but the consumer needs to be much more selective as well. Yeah. And in that way, they kind of set the precedent that the content creator follows, and vice versa. Then that's how you get that kind of equilibrium. But again, with like music as an example, everyone can be a rapper these days. But I think there's a drop-off point for any content creator, and it's the ones that show the consistency, the ones that show that they're willing to go past the point of where they're only getting 100 views for the first 10 episodes. You never know when your tipping point or your breakthrough point is going to come. And for a lot of those rappers and a lot of those content creators, they stop after 3. They'll do episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, and that's it, they're gone because they're like, oh, I've bun this, it doesn't work, I've bun this, no one's listening to this, I don't want to do this anymore because I'm not getting the ratings. And a lot of times people do things for the ratings rather than doing it for themselves. And I think even with entrepreneurship, you have to do it for yourself. Even you can have a selfless motive to it where you want to give, but in the same regard, you have to do it for yourself. That has to come true to you before it will ever go anywhere. And I think that's always been my philosophy.
I think what you was touching on, you remember when we had Richard Saltzman come in? It's basically what I thought you were talking about. Is you should always have that why, and you know the importance of why usually is, you know, very much important in finding success in whatever you're doing. If you know what you're doing and you know why you're doing it, it's very easy for you to communicate that belief to other people. And once you do communicate that belief to other people, then they, you know, buy into your idea at that belief level. They like what you're doing because they also believe in what you're doing it for. So yeah, I definitely do agree with you. So